Miller loses the football. It's loose. Central recovers. It's over.
Who has it? Let's see. The officials say, do they say he was down? What do they say? We're waiting.
They're not saying anything.
They're not saying anything.
It's over.
The Crusaders win it.
On December 3rd, 1993, the Steubenville Catholic Central Crusaders claimed the Ohio Division V High School Football Championship. 20 years later, the accomplishment still serves as a testament to the hard-working people of Steubenville and the courage, character, heart, and spirit of the Crusaders. Steubenville, Ohio sits on the Ohio River, about 65 miles downstream from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. At its height of affluence, Steubenville's lifeblood flowed from the area's countless steel mills and coal mines. The tough labor associated with these industries brought a certain type of resident to the town.
The idea of really working hard to achieve a goal, whether it's in a sport or whether it's in work or whether it's in a family, I think came from the immigrants that came to this area to work in the steel mills and the coal mines and the railroads, and they brought that work ethic with them to work hard and to succeed, to take care of their families.
You just bring your lunch bucket, you get up, you go to work, you do your job, and you do it well, and that's passed on to the kids.
Not only was a strong work ethic passed on to the kids, but they were also instilled with a strong sense of community and rugged self-reliance.
I remember running the streets of Steubenville playing Relivio till the street lights went on. The kind of Relivio we played sometimes was bloodletting, okay, over 3 or 4 city blocks. We made the rules, and if we didn't like the rules, we changed the rules. And we learned how to administer and conduct ourselves and communicate with each other. We formed relationships and bonds, and leadership was, built up in us. The foundation of everything we did came from those times.
Along with the town's grit comes a love of football that dates back to 1898, when Steubenville High School fielded its first team. But many residents will quickly remind you the town has 2 high schools with a rich gridiron tradition. In 1930, Holy Name High School became Catholic Central and quickly earned a reputation for taking on the state's toughest teams.
A typical Central schedule, we played the toughest teams that we could. We had 4 state champions in the first 7 games, and we were very lucky we came out unscathed on that. The only thing we had was a tie with Weirton.
Under the leadership of head coach Mac Cara and his 2 assistants, Notre Dame greats John Pilisky and Butch Nemec, the Crusaders ran through their opponents. As the season went on, the team showed championship qualities that would define their season and lay the tradition for great Crusader teams yet to come.
Very tight-knit group. We took care of the school, and we really had a good crop of nuns, and they loved us. They made little sacks with long strings on them so we could tuck them into our belts. Almost all of us had a relic. I don't know whether Monsignor knew we took on relics or not, but we had a relic I had a relic of the 2 cross in every game I played at Catholic Central.
The Crusaders took their 8-0-1 record into the last game of the season against Campbell Memorial. The week prior, Campbell had destroyed State Power Canton McKinley 35-7.
All the sports writers from the upper part of the state, from Cleveland and Youngstown was there, and we did beat Campbell Memorial 19-0. And after that, we got noticed.
Coach Pilisky had heard Newt Rockne deliver the legendary Gipper speech during the 1928 Notre Dame Army game. Following Central's win over Campbell Memorial, reporters asked Pilisky to describe Mac Cara.
One of them asked John Pilisky, says, is Mac the best speaker you ever heard? He says, all but one.
By the mid-1940s, school enrollment had outgrown the capacity of the original high school building, and the newly ordained Bishop of Steubenville, John King Musio, laid out plans for a new facility.
Shortly after his arrival in town, Bishop realized we needed a new high school because the high school they were utilizing was down on South 5th Street and it was bulging at the walls, and he knew we had to have a new school. He proposed it to the parish priest, saying we would probably need approximately $1.5 million. They told him that was impossible.
Under Bishop Musio's leadership, the diocese raised nearly $2 million in just 2 weeks. In the fall of 1950, the new school opened its doors to students. The bishop remained personally involved in daily events at Catholic Central until his death in 1977. In doing so, he ensured the highest academic and athletic standards.
The whole football team would assemble in Lanneman Hall. We'd all go down to the front seats and Bishop would come in and he would give us a speech and fire all of us up, saying that if you were true to yourself and you played to the best of your ability, then win or lose, you won the game.
Always an avid sports fan, Bishop Musio was also known to give Crusader athletes sports advice during his visits to the school.
He said, I was talking to the coach. He says, you get nervous, just like you did when you served for me. He says, don't get so nervous out there. Relax. You got good coaches and you got good teammates. He goes, and I'll be praying for you.
Armed with the bishop's prayers and led by quarterback Jerry Fado and bruising running back Buster Yannon, the 1964 team went 9-1, losing only to state powerhouse Niles McKinley. The Crusaders finished 10th in the state. Even more impressively, 13 seniors went on to play college ball. Before leaving for a junior college, Fado paid a visit to his mentor. Like Bishop Musio, Coach Pont was quick to give his quarterback some advice.
He says, whatever you do, don't forget your religion. So here I got Bishop Musio giving me football instructions and Coach Pont giving me spiritual instructions.
7 years later, under the leadership of Coach Tom Korab, the Crusaders fielded arguably the greatest team in Ohio Valley football history, the 1971 Crusaders. Like the 1946 team, the 71 squad faced a formidable schedule.
We was double A, we played 8 AAA teams. And I think the biggest victory on our part was Pittsburgh Central Catholic. They was rated, I think, 16th, 15th on the East Coast. And we come in and we beat them 19-6.
Despite the challenging schedule, the senior classmen never doubted their ability and set high standards for themselves and their teammates.
I think we went into the season feeling that we were going to win every game. I think we felt in control of every game. I don't believe we were ever behind in the game, and we expected to win.
We've always stayed close, and we were like that when we were in high school, you know, and Coach Korab demanded that. If we went somewhere, we went all together, or we didn't go. So, and I think that was part of it.
The tight-knit and determined Crusaders tore through their schedule, recording 6 shutouts and outscoring their opponents 253-26. In the last game of the season, the team captured the AA state championship by blanking Austintown Fitch 28-0.
The last seconds tick off, watching the fans come out on the field and get lifted up on and carried off the field. That was a special moment.
The rest of the 70s proved to be a turbulent period for the Crusaders. The 1973 team went 8-2, but the school saw consecutive 2-win seasons in 75 and 76. In 1977, Coach Rich Walensky took the helm.
I had coached a number of schools in the area, but when I was looking to come to Central, it was because not only of the opportunity to coach a really good group of kids in a school full of tradition, but looking for something maybe more spiritual and more religious than I felt that I needed in my life at that time.
Walensky's first 2 seasons saw notable improvement and positioned the program for success in the next decade.
We had some really wonderful players, wonderful coaches that were committed and dedicated to the program. Kids like Danny McGinnis, Russell Gillison, Anthony Pirro, Timmy Bain, Lenny Lamatrice, Michael Paisley, were all just very, very talented and tough, young men that we had the opportunity to coach. They were really good role models for the younger kids, and they played so well and so hard together because they were really good friends, off the field and on the field as well. And every year after that sort of built off that 1980 team.
The 1980s saw the formation of the nucleus of the state championship coaching staff and the establishment of important Crusader traditions that endure to this day.
I was just kind of doodling one day and just, CCHS, Catholic Central High School, courage, character, heart, spirit.
The school made t-shirts showcasing the acronym, and the new logo stuck.
It's really, really humbling and a great sense of pride, on my part that is stuck, and it's still a part of Catholic Central.
Despite a drop in enrollment that corresponded with the slowdown of the local steel industry in the late 70s, Central maintained a very competitive big school schedule.
I don't think our kids ever went into a game thinking that they couldn't win it.
Unfortunately, Catholic Central's challenging schedule prevented the Crusaders from making a state playoff appearance until the end of the decade.
Week in and week out, it was a meat grinder. And I think that those teams, if they would have been fortunate enough to get to the playoffs, would have done extremely well.
Finally, after many near misses, the 1989 squad qualified for the Division IV playoffs. In the first round of action, the Crusaders proved themselves worthy by blanking playoff regular Amanda Clear Creek 21-0. But the lack of playoff experience quickly caught up with the Blue and Gold as they underestimated Fredericktown in Week 2 and fell behind 21-0 at the half. A valiant second-half Crusader rally fell short, and the team lost 21-14.
All the teams are in there for a reason, and that reason is they're good, and that's their reward, and we just were not ready to play.
Leading up to, of course, what happened in '93 in the playoffs, I think one of the advantages for the coaching staff was, of course, the experience of being in there in '89 and '91. The lesson is, when you get into the playoffs, every team is good.
In the spring of 1991, longtime assistant coach Greg Bain was hired as head coach.
Coach Bain is a unique individual. Obviously he's had tremendous success in terms of wins and losses, but if you take away the 93 championship, you take away the 2005 state runner-up, you take away everything that he has earned on the field, and he's still the greatest coach that ever came through these halls. He has his priorities straight, faith, his family, his profession, the things that he's instilled in us go well beyond the playing field.
Under Bain, the Crusaders had something to prove during the 1991 season.
The 91 season, I think we played it with a little bit of a chip on our shoulder. And we were good at that. And I think that's what one of Coach Bain's strengths is that he has that ability to focus the team and the staff on a mission. And our mission that year was to prove to everybody that we were a good football team.
In Bain's first year as head coach, the Crusaders made their second playoff appearance. This time, the Crusaders fought their way to the state semifinal.
The 1991 team was a very tight team. They had very good leaders as well. These guys really set the standard for us to follow for the rest of our years at Central.
Due largely to that tradition, the class of '94 enjoyed more wins than any other class in Crusader football history. From 1991 to 1993, Catholic Central racked up 29 wins against 8 losses, collected 3 Ohio Valley Athletic Conference titles, 2 regional titles, and 1 state title. Despite the accolades, success for this group was never guaranteed.
Our freshman year, we were a pretty small team, so we had to play multiple positions. I played running back, fullback, tailback, as well as receiver, tight end.
With us being small, it made us really tight as a group. We came together as individuals, and we never wanted to let the guy down next to us. So, you know, we did what we had to do. Anytime the coach asked us to play a certain position, plug us in here or there, that was our job, and that's what we did.
We didn't have any superstars. We were, you know, I guess some said we were comparable to the Bad News Bears. We almost, you know, didn't field a whole team. I think everyone played offense and defense. I don't think there were many kids on the bench.
Our freshman year was, we had 16 players come out, and a lot of adjustments. And the credit goes to the coaches, Mike Lally, Bobby Petrella, Dave Colpy, and we did some inventing like half-line practices, and we never had a full team until we went and played. But the boys responded very well during the season, and we were 7-1-1 freshman year, and that's a credit to them.
Like I said, it was a dirty dozen plus three, and because you go in a game, you look on the sideline to send somebody in, and there's three people there, so you could do it. But you know, but what we had on the team, they were tough.
After much success as underclassmen, the close-knit and hard-nosed class of '94 looked to their senior season with high expectations.
All through the off-season lifting program, conditioning program, the goal that we always talked about as seniors, and the goal that we really communicated on down to the juniors and sophomores and even freshmen, was to win a state championship.
The team had reason to be confident. Mike Orlando and Donald Thorne returned to the backfield from the previous season. Mike Kuzikowski joined them at fullback, and sophomore Benji Claus, junior Dave Connor, and senior Shannon Kaczynski formed the receiving corps. Defensively, Kuzikowski, Thorne, and Jason Bias returned to their linebacker positions from the previous year and were joined by senior Dan Kanayer and junior Mike D'Onofrio. Orlando reprised his role at the strong safety position and was joined by defensive backs Kaczynski, Connor, and junior Robbie Bodo. Both the offensive and defensive lines were question marks, with no linemen returning from the previous year.
We had some holes to fill, and we had holes to fill every year. You know, we always graduated a good group of seniors.
Seniors Carlo Canella, Brian Fellows, Larry Chambers, Ron Clark anchored the offensive line, with juniors Jason Angelica and Jimmy Joe Menendez rounding out the Crusader front. On defense, Angelica and classmate Carmine Montana manned the tackle positions, with Fellows and Chambers on the ends. The coaches had their work cut out for them, but were confident the linemen would meet the challenge.
It wasn't that we were a gigantic line or this or that. It was just the fact that the attitude, the leadership we had, the quality of athlete that we had, and the heart that they had. That was the bottom line.
The leadership traits and heart were certainly not limited to the linemen. Mike Orlando had been the squad's visible leader since taking over quarterback responsibilities midway through the 1992 season.
In the 31 years that I coached, I don't think I was ever around a better kid, a finer kid, a more natural leader.
Coach Bain described Orlando in 2 words: glue kid.
Glue kid is a term that you use to a Danny McGinnis, okay, all right, a Michael Haney, all right, a Joey Prest, and a Michael Orlando. They hold everything together. When times get tough, all right, they would, you know, the players would cling to them, okay, and they would look to them maybe even sometimes before the coaches.
While Orlando was the focal point of the '93 team, the other seniors embraced their roles.
That senior class had role players. You know, they had the Mike Orlandos and the Kuzikowskis that played every down, never came out. And then you had the second tier guys that started maybe one way. Them guys from the start, off-season workouts, summer program workouts, they're the ones that we look to. They're the ones that were running hard, lifting hard, never going on vacation. They're the ones that instilled the reasons why we had a very successful year.
As the '93 Crusaders began spring workouts, tragedy struck the Crusader family when 1991 graduate Joe Prest passed away. His example and untimely death cast a long shadow over the '93 seniors.
Joe Prest personified what it meant to play football at Central. He personified everything that we stood for, not only as a school but as a football team. He was a larger than life figure when I was growing up, but he always had time to talk with everyone, to laugh, to joke around, to make everyone feel welcome, to feel part of the team, to feel part of the school. Coach Bain referred to Joe as a glue kid, or a leader. So Joe was one of those types of kids who could keep the team together, keep them focused, keep them moving forward. And I think a lot of the characteristics that Joe had, that transferred down to us for our state championship team. We had that same focus. We had similar leaders.
The guy always had a smile, and he always walked with just pizzazz. You know, he had that snap in his step. And we were close. You know, our families were one house away from each other. He was just a great guy. And I remember in '93, you know, Joe, we got the news that Joe had unfortunately passed away. And what a tremendous loss in my heart, and not only mine, but our teams and everybody else that was part of the Central family.
We got into the season, Kuz and I started going to the cemetery before every game to visit Joe. You know, it goes back to that Central tradition that we were part of, where you grow up and you're looking up to Crusaders as role models. Joe was our role model. And so going to the cemetery was very motivating for us. Not only were we visiting our role model, but we were just focusing on the fact that it was now our time to be role models. It was now our time to put our mark on.
I think Joe's death made us appreciate a lot. Joe was the epitome of Catholic Central, of what a Crusader was all about. He had it all together. Popular, good looks, and for him to lose his life, it kind of really brought us back to reality, and kind of taught us to take advantage of what you have, and the opportunities that's before us, and because you never know when something can be gone.
The Crusaders had their work cut out for them in the season opener against the Campbell Memorial Red Devils.
Just kind of reflecting back to a story that my dad told me, years after, that they went and scouted Campbell Memorial up at East Liverpool, and on the ride home that no one spoke a word, and it took quite some time, maybe like around Toronto or something, coming back down Route 7 there, that Campbell Memorial was really good. So going in that game, they knew as a coaching staff this was going to be a pretty tough test, and for us to, obviously we'll never like to lose, but for the fight that we put up, and the way that we battle throughout, I think kind of spoke to our team. They maybe didn't realize that or recognize that early, but as the season moved on and progressed, I think you kind of got a glimpse of the character that we had and the toughness that we had.
The Red Devil speed proved too much for the inexperienced offensive line as Mike Orlando was forced to scramble most of the game. The Crusaders racked up a measly 96 yards in total offense and lost 20-7. The coaching staff, however, did not lose faith in the team. Their tenacity and big play capability kept the game close and foreshadowed good things to come.
We thought we had a good football team. We were more convinced that we had a good football team. Myself personally, that's the first time it really kind of clicked in that we have to take more advantage of the skill people that we had. We always had tough guys at Central. Sometimes we didn't have the most skillful guys. I mean, I'm talking on like overall speed and quickness, and we felt that we had that at the quarterback, the running back, and at the receiving position.
That team really fortified the offensive line and gave us sort of renewed focus on the fact that we weren't going to go anywhere as a team unless the offensive line gelled and really started to perform better.
The offensive linemen made notable improvements over the next 3 weeks, and the stingy Crusader defense pitched 3 shutouts to register a 3-1 record as the Blue and Gold renewed its annual matchup with Crosstown rival Steubenville Big Red. For 58 years, Steubenville Big Red and Steubenville Catholic Central sustained one of the best rivalries in the state of Ohio.
The annual Big Red Central football game was the athletic event of the year in Steubenville, Ohio. It divided the community down the middle, and that went from the ordinary working individual to the professionals in the community. When you went to the game, you couldn't get a seat because it had been sold out months in advance.
When the rivalry ended in 2000, Big Red owned a 41-16-1 advantage. But a closer look at the scores shows the competitive nature of the annual meeting. The average score was 19-9, with a quarter of the games being decided by less than a touchdown.
When I was in high school in my sophomore year, we had a young man from Fallensby. His name was Joe Prest, and he was quite an athlete. He was a magician with the ball, and he threw many touchdowns for Central against the opposition. And he probably is the only quarterback that I can remember that beat Steubenville Big Red 3 years running.
During the 1980s, Big Red established the longest winning streak of the rivalry. From 1981 to 1991, they claimed 11 straight victories.
Even the games that we had lost were battles, they were wars. We were in the games, and we knew that we can compete with Big Red.
In the 1984 battle, playoff berths for both teams were on the line. Big Red clinched victory with 19 seconds left. The Crusaders did not qualify for the playoffs, while Big Red went on to win a state championship.
You know, when you're picking up kids and, off the floor, that are bawling their eyes out in the locker room, that's a tough thing.
Another 8 years would pass before the Crusaders broke Big Red's lock on the city title, and it was an unlikely team that ended the streak. The 1992 squad took a 3-3 record into the rivalry game and were looking to get their season turned around. They executed flawlessly and capitalized on big plays to earn their first city championship since 1980.
The series wound up with 16 wins for us in 92 and 95, and you check the records. And those are the only Central wins against Big Red, where Big Red had a winning record. That's still something to be said when at that time when everyone was saying, well, maybe it's time to quit playing. That I think we proved that we could still compete.
The 1993 City Showdown was as exciting as the previous years, but the big plays and breaks that led to Crusader victory in '92 fell the other way a year later. After recovering a Crusader fumble, Big Red scored with less than a minute remaining in the opening quarter.
Option he keeps, and he's into the end zone. Touchdown, Big Red.
The Crusaders responded on the very next drive to even the score, but Big Red would capitalize on another turnover and took a 14-7 lead into halftime.
The 40-yard line finds a lane, turns it up, and he is gone. Touchdown, Big Red. Ricardo Parrish on the screen pass.
Late in the fourth quarter, the Crusaders faced a critical 4th down and 11 deep in Big Red territory. A scrambling Mike Orlando found Benji Claus for a 29-yard touchdown pass. Orlando converted the 2-point conversion to give the Crusaders a 15-14 lead with 3:35 left on the clock. But Big Red would not go quietly into the night. A minute later, they scored the game-winning touchdown on a 63-yard flanker screen.
It's etched in my memory forever. Bubba Constantini catching that screen pass with under 2 minutes left in the game. We did have an extra defensive back on the field. I was on the field as well, and he still ended up scoring. The big thing that bothered me is I had 2 goals as a youngster growing up, and one of them was to win a state championship, and the other one was to beat Big Red, and we fulfilled one of those.
I remember sitting next to Mike Orlando. The bus was dead silent, except for some tears here and there. But I remember looking over at Mike and telling him that we didn't have any guts, and I think that really hit home for me and also for Mike, but I think for the team as well. We really had to pick ourselves up by our bootstraps and really focus on what our goals were, which is ultimately to win a state title. And I think that moment on the bus really sort of set the stage for what we were able to do.
After the heartbreaking loss to Big Red, the entire season rested on beating an undefeated and playoff-bound Bel Air squad in Game 6.
Our backs were against the wall. We knew Bel Air had a good tradition, and they would definitely come to play. So if we had an opportunity to amount to anything in our season and reach the playoffs, we had to beat Belair.
Coach Bain's pep talk before the game would prove prophetic.
If we beat Belair, we won't lose again. If we don't beat Belair, we might not win again.
The game would be one for the ages as both teams stood toe-to-toe for 48 minutes. After Jason Bias blocked a Belair field goal attempt, the Crusaders got on the board first when Mike Orlando found the end zone on a boot around left end. Belair quickly responded to tie the game. With just 42 seconds left in the first half, the Big Reds found the end zone again. A 50-yard touchdown pass put them ahead 13-7 at intermission. The Crusaders began the second half with a dogged determination. Donald Thorne stepped in front of a Belair pass to end the Big Reds' opening drive. Mike Kuzikowski crossed the goal line a few minutes later to give the Crusaders a 14-13 lead midway through the third quarter.
The emergence of Mike Kuzikowski, his effectiveness as a runner, his emergence as a running back was a big factor. Let alone to have someone to come in and spell him like Jason Bias, which that was just a great bonus right there.
A Belair field goal made the score 16-14 with a minute left in the third quarter, but the Crusaders took little time to respond. Benji Claus returned the ensuing kickoff to midfield, and hard running by Kuzikowski and Donald Thorne moved the ball forward toward the end zone, where Jason Bias finished the drive with a 1-yard plunge. Mike Orlando converted the 2-point conversion to give the Crusaders a 22-16 advantage with 11 minutes remaining in the game. On the ensuing drive, the Big Reds marched to the central 1-yard line, where the blue and gold defense stood firm in a goal line stand that would define the season.
Football, I've been watching the greatest goal line stand I've ever seen. First and goal from the half-yard line, and we stuffed Belair on all 4 downs.
Schembeckler says, you find a lot about character when somebody's on your 1-yard line.
Davis has running room. He's at the 5. He doesn't get in.
To me, that was just that was a microcosm, all right, of that season.
The Crusaders drove to midfield on the ensuing drive, but were forced to punt. Belair took the opportunity and scored on a 92-yard drive to take the lead 23-22 with under 2 minutes left in the game. With their goal of a state championship on the line, the Crusaders turned to their quarterback, Mike Orlando, for leadership.
Mike Orlando came running from the sidelines into the huddle and said, "St. Jude, fellas." That rang true to all of us in the huddle because St. Jude is the patron saint of lost causes. And I think Mike wanted to reassure everyone in the huddle that there's no way we're going to lose this game.
The Crusaders methodically moved down the field on a drive marked by big plays. The most critical play came on 4th and long when Donald Thorne made a one-handed catch to pick up 15 yards and a first down. As time expired, Benji Claus nailed a 35-yard field goal to give the Crusaders a 25-23 victory.
It's rare to see a kicker who's a sophomore kick a 39-yarder.
I think sometimes things work out the way they should, whether you want them to or not. I think we had to lose the Campbell Memorial. I think we had to lose the Big Red. I think we had to, have Belair right up against Big Red the following week to kind of test us and check our character. And we didn't look back and didn't lose after that.
The Crusaders put their newfound confidence, explosive offense, and stifling defense to work and closed out the season with wins over Indian Creek, Notre Dame Cathedral Latin, and Coshocton. With a 27-8 thumping of Toronto, the Crusaders clinched their 3rd playoff berth in 5 seasons. The Crusaders faced a juggernaut in the first round of the 1993 playoffs. Led by a bruising fullback named Casey Beckett, the East Knox Bulldogs had championship dreams of their own.
We go up to Sam, right? And I'm telling you, their behinds were this big, and they come off the ball, and they had that big back. So, like you could X and O all you want, but that was the thing we got to stay low, or we're going to get blowed off the ball.
The first half did not go as planned for the Crusaders, as Casey Beckett ran for 122 yards, and East Knox mounted 2 long scoring drives. After each score, though, the Crusader offense responded with their big play capability. Donald Thorne ran for a 53-yard touchdown off the option to answer East Knox's first score. Mike Orlando's 29-yard pass to Dave Connor set up a Donald Thorne 1-yard touchdown run and brought the Crusaders within 2 points just before the half. After regrouping at halftime, 155-pound defensive back Shannon Kaczynski set the tone for the second half when he brought down the giant East Knox back.
I knew there was no way I could form tackle him. Listening to the coaches at halftime, they said, that you needed to tackle low, dive for the knees, and hold on for help, and that's what we did.
The momentum began to shift as the Crusader defense wore down the giant back and the offensive line took control of the line of scrimmage. Late in the third quarter, Kuzikowski broke a 44-yard run up the middle and set up a Mike Orlando touchdown to take the lead 20-14 at the start of the fourth quarter. A big hit by Jason Angelica popped Beckett's ear pad out of his helmet and set the stage for one of the lighter moments of the season.
My man, Angelica, sticks Mr. Casey Beckett, and then there happens to be this little Pollock, number 44, Mike Kuzikowski, that just happened to pick up the ear pad and politely stuff it in his pants.
Smart move. That was a smart move, okay?
The Beckett kid had to go out, and I think it was a 3rd and short or a 4th and short. It was a short yardage play, and he had to leave the game, and we ended up making a big stop there.
I did not know that he did that, but it showed on TV, him stuffing that in there. And I remember their coach was yelling, "Got his ear pad, it's in his pants, it's in his pants."
They get an edge sometimes, and he was great at finding that edge.
The Crusaders faced Lorraine Clearview in the second game of the '93 playoffs. The blue and gold dominated the Clippers during the first half of play and weathered Lorraine's second half rally to advance to the semifinals. A 22-yard Mike Orlando pass to Dave Connor with 35 seconds left in the second quarter sent the Crusaders into the locker room with an 11-0 halftime lead. The Clippers started the second half intent on chipping away at that Crusader lead, but Jason Bias's diving interception quickly derailed their plans.
He always knew where he was supposed to be. Sometimes he just made a choice not to be there. The one thing about Jason, you always knew if the ball was close, he was going to lay out and go get it. And he was a good enough athlete that he could make those great catches, where he was diving and hitting the ground and coming up with it.
The Crusader offense wasted no time, and Bias carried the ball into the end zone to make the score 18-0 only 3 minutes into the second half. A Clipper touchdown with 2 minutes left in the third quarter temporarily shifted the momentum. During the ensuing drive, Kuzikowski did his part to regain that momentum with tough runs of 16 and 25 yards.
It was an option or something, a wide play to the left, and he took a shot, and it was one of those that, he got up and he was woozy, and you can tell him he was wobbly a little bit, and in typical Kuz fashion, he just ran back to the huddle, kind of staggered back to the huddle in this case. And I remember being in there and the guys behind him, literally propping him up and asking him if he's okay, and him grunting something to you, and then he'd take the ball the next play, and I think he ran for like 20-25 yards on the very next play. That was Kuz in a nutshell right there.
Kuzikowski's run set up Benji Claus's second field goal of the night and made the score 21-7 at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Before the game ended, the Clippers reached the end zone again to make the final score 21-14.
We won the game, but I don't think we played as well as we were capable, and maybe it was just a little bit of a letdown, similar to like '89, coming off a good win in the first round of the playoffs.
Some of the guys were a little bit subdued, and then they were talking about that we never should have gave up those touchdowns.
Would Lombardi say chase perfection, you'll achieve excellence, and but see, sometimes that's a good sign when you win, all right, and the kids are not that they're not happy, but they're a little bit disappointed.
Several times during the 1980s, the Crusaders barely missed qualifying for the playoffs. As the coaching staff watched other local schools make deep playoff runs, they resolved to one day practice on Thanksgiving. The win over Lorraine Clearview propelled the '93 team toward a semifinal showdown with small school powerhouse Newark Catholic and gave the coaching staff that long-awaited Thanksgiving Day practice.
So when that happened, I remember walking into the locker room, and we practiced earlier that day, and just looking at Coach Bain, and just nothing was said. We just looked at each other and kind of smiled because now it was our turn to practice on Thanksgiving Day.
So when we got into playoffs, I knew that the road was going to either go through Newark or St. Henry.
Newark Catholic reminded me of us. They were small, they were undersized, they weren't the fastest, they weren't the strongest, but somehow they always won. And I think that's due to the focus, the work ethic, and their leadership.
The game did not start well for the Crusaders. A fumble on their first possession led to a Newark touchdown less than 3 minutes into the game. The Crusaders' second drive stalled at midfield, but big defensive plays by Brian Fellows forced a Newark punt, and the offense went to work at the Newark 48. This time, a screen pass to Kuzakowski on 3rd and 19 resulted in a 25-yard gain and set up Brian Fellows' 19-yard touchdown reception. The Green Wave led 8-6 at the end of the first quarter. The score remained unchanged until late in the third period, when Mike Orlando hit David Connor for a 50-yard touchdown pass.
I just told Coach Bain, I said, I think they're ready for an out and up. This guy's up kind of tight.
They go for it, all right? And we hit David on the out and up.
Down 12-8 to start the fourth quarter, Newark drove 66 yards to retake the lead. Mike Orlando shook off the mud and rain and led the Crusaders down the field for the game's final score. The highlight of the drive, an incredible 37-yard over-the-shoulder catch by Donald Thorne.
He's looking back, directly back over his shoulders, and then just catches the ball in a crowd, and with the snow and the rain coming down. At that moment, you could probably make a strong case for your two playmakers right there, Mike and Donald, just hooking up and making a huge play on it.
What an outstanding catch by Donald, which again, that leads us to, all right, our clinching touchdown there.
With just under 7 minutes left in the game, Thorne reached the end zone to give the Crusaders a 19-15 lead.
13 weeks earlier against Campbell Memorial, it was an adventure. I spent a lot of time scrambling around and sort of improvising. We have to remember that going into '93, we had basically an entirely new line. My mom even commented on asking who in the hell coaches the line after that game. And, ironically enough, it was my dad who does that. But it was going into something like that when you're replacing everybody. There's going to be some growing pains, and it just speaks to the coaching staff that we had, that they were patient with us and really did a fantastic job with our offensive line. That continued from Campbell all the way through the state championship.
After Central defensive back Robbie Bodo intercepted a Newark pass, a Crusader victory seemed locked. But a last-minute miscue kept the Central family on the edge of their seats long after time expired.
So it was 4th and long, and we're in punt formation. I take the snap and run out the clock is what the design was, what the plan was. I don't know what it was if I reverted back to basketball, but I saw the clock go to 0, and I just heaved that thing up, and thinking the game was over, and obviously it was not. It made it a very interesting moment in my career.
The ball landed on the Crusader 2-yard line and bounced into the unsuspecting hands of 1990 Central graduate Joe Smarella. Like many Crusader fans, Smarella had ran onto the field in celebration. Fortunately for the Crusaders, the referees ruled the ball dead and the game over. Central was headed to Massillon.
I honestly thought we lost. I thought I just lost the game for us. I was sick. I mean, I've never felt like that before, and I just collapsing, and there's everybody around you, and running around excited, thinking that we won. I'm down there thinking that we lost, and Coach Bain, finally makes his way to me, and I remember asking if we won, and he was like, yeah, we won, and which was good. And he asked me what I was doing, and I really didn't have an answer for him. And in typical Coach Bain fashion, he told me that I was playing to the crowd and to get into the locker room.
The final play got the attention of journalists across the state. Some even flew to Mount Union College to interview the man who caught the ball.
I saw the ball in the air, and it started coming right for me. There were people rushing the field, and the ball just happened to come to me. And as far as I know, I was out of bounds. I didn't do it intentionally. I mean, I don't think anybody would. If I'd have known it was going to alter the outcome of a game or something, I definitely would not have done it.
Despite the last-second dramatics, Orlando had done what no other Crusader quarterback had done before. In passing for 170 yards, he accounted for 85% of the Crusader total offense and led his team to a shot at the state title against 11-2 Liberty Center. The Liberty Center Tigers stood between the Crusaders and the 1993 Ohio Division V State Championship. But before the Blue and Gold could handle the Tigers, they had to endure a first-half storm of bad luck and tough breaks that would have broken a lesser team.
It was just an awful start for us. But being who we are and where we're from, I think that sort of adversity is something that we embrace, and we figure it out some way, somehow, and we did that.
The Crusader offense committed 3 turnovers in their own territory. With their backs to the wall, the defense held firm for the first 15 minutes of the game.
Intercepted at the 5, out to the 10, the 15.
3 minutes into the second quarter, Liberty Center drew first blood.
She's in for the touchdown.
But true to form and tradition, the Crusaders battled back. Big gains by Donald Thorne shifted the momentum to the Blue and Gold, and Orlando went to the air, hitting David Connor for 11 yards and a first down, before finding Kuzikowski for a touchdown pass to tie the game with 5 minutes left in the half.
Touchdown! Whoa!
That's heart and character right there. Having those turnovers, all right, and coming out even at the half, we felt pretty good.
After a scoreless third quarter, the Tigers marched to the Crusaders' 23-yard line, where Jason Bias slammed the Tiger tailback for a loss. On the next play, Bias's rush of the Liberty Center quarterback forced an errant pass that Mike Orlando picked off in the end zone. The Crusaders took over on their own 20, where Jason Bias, filling in at tailback for an injured Donald Thorne, rambled 13 yards and a first down. On the next play, Mike Orlando found the end zone on a 67-yard quarterback draw. The Crusaders led 14-7 with less than 5 minutes remaining in the game.
I was able to find a crease there and break to the outside, and it was, probably one of the cooler individual moments. It's when you're running like that, it's just silent. You don't hear anything. It's one of those things. It's kind of like when you have headphones in when you're running, you can just hear yourself breathing. It was one of those moments. So I remember breaking out in Benji Claus getting out in front of me and laying a block for me to score, and kind of after that, getting in the end zone and the excitement and stuff. And I remember pointing up to Joe, and I had a conversation going with him all game. It was pretty surreal, pretty cool, and it was just kind of my gesture to him and all the guys that came before us that kind of this was for those guys as well.
The Crusader defense held the Tigers on the ensuing drive, and Central took possession at their own 19-yard line. With less than 2 minutes left in the game, they were unable to pick up a first down. On 4th and a yard, the Crusaders called timeout, and Coach Bain entered the offensive huddle.
We're going 6 or 7 look for it. Okay, so again, that's my call. That's my call.
It was kind of an option. We could either punt it or fake it, and Kuz the up guy, he had the call, and anytime you give a guy like Kuzi the option to go for it, he's going to go for it. So I knew that when we broke out of the huddle that we were going for it, just hoping for the best.
When I heard the green call by Kuz, and I remember listening to the linemen on that side and hearing a lot of bad words, and I kind of figured that was the wrong call to make, the green. We tried, we blocked, they had an overload to that side, we didn't pick it up.
I was pretty stunned. I eventually talked into the headphones, but not for a while. It seemed like 5 minutes before anyone said anything.
a little noisy on the phones, a little yelling, little outlandish remarks, this and that.
A minute later, the Tigers tied the score at 14 with 13 seconds left in the game.
So after we got stopped on the fake punt, and they scored a couple plays later, it was again one of those moments that we just had to regain our composure, and we did. And we figured we were going to go to overtime, that we just take care of it there.
The Crusaders offense started the overtime on the 20 and moved the ball to the Liberty Center 3-yard line. On 3rd and goal, field goal kicker Benji Kloss was shaken up while trying to hit Mike Orlando on a reverse option pass. Facing 4th and goal without a kicker, the Crusaders had few options. The team's backup kicker, Mike Kuzakowski, was ready to step in.
And Michael was off to my right and he goes, "Hey, what about me?"
Kuzakowski nailed the field goal and put the Crusaders up 17-14. A Crusader state championship now rested on the shoulders of the defense.
We kind of had a pretty good idea what their bread and butter plays were, and we had a little stunt with our lineman. I believe it was Carmine Montana that shot the gap.
Montana disrupted the Liberty Center handoff, and Larry Chambers fell on the ball to end the game and secure the championship for the Crusaders. In front of a Division V record crowd, the Crusaders began their championship celebration.
The Crusaders win it as the ball is fumbled, and Steubenville Central are the Division V Ohio champions.
News of the Crusader victory spread quickly, and as the team buses entered Jefferson County, fire trucks and emergency vehicles joined the sheriff's escort and led the victors home. The next morning, fire trucks carried the team along the parade route during the town's Christmas parade.
I remember Mr. Prest coming to the fire truck, and
I placed a copy of the newspaper headlines on Joe's grave, along with a note thanking him. I wouldn't say we won it for him. At no point do I remember any of us saying, we're going to win this for Joe. But I would definitely say that we won it with him. He was part of that tradition that we brought with us to the state championship game that night.
Since their last game as Crusaders, newspaper clippings have yellowed and memories have faded, but the pride and honor of attending Catholic Central endures, not just for the '93 team, but for all who wore the blue and gold.
It's still important to me to say that I'm from Steubenville Catholic Central High School and that I am a fighting Crusader and that I will always be a fighting Crusader.
It will always have a place in Central history. I'm always proud to say that, I was a member of the 1993 state championship team. And as a coach now, I have several people ask me, where'd you play at? And the first thing I tell them is that, there's 2 teams in Steubenville that have won state championships. And I really want them to know that in 1993, the team that won a state championship wore blue and gold.
For many players, the amount of pride they have is matched only by their sense of gratitude.
I was a single parent. I'm not trying to compare football with being a single parent, but it helped me with my confidence and mental toughness. I needed to be a good single father.
The coaching staff, it wasn't a glamorous job. What they did during my 4 years was not necessarily teach us how to win football games, but they taught us how to be good people. They taught us the morals and values that we really need to help us be successful, to be good people once we leave the walls of Steubenville Catholic Central. And I think in that respect, they absolutely succeeded.
But when you're part of something like we were in '93, those words mean something. They're truths. The lessons that I learned at Steubenville Catholic Central and during that 1993 football season, that they continue to guide me today.
The state championship is an example of what can happen when 50 and 60 guys come together for one common goal. As a head coach now, I have a responsibility that I learned here, that it's more about making great young men, and helping them and instilling the beliefs that were taught to me, instilling those into my players. So I'll be forever grateful for Catholic Central and the things that I learned here. Most importantly, the things of character and work ethic. The wins were great, but those are the things that I take with me, the intangible stuff.
As the 93 Crusaders celebrate the 20th anniversary of their accomplishment, it is indeed the intangibles on which they reflect. It is not the victory nor the journey, but the principles of Catholic Central High School and the courage, character, heart, and spirit that made them champions long before they took the field.